Hi, and welcome to Section 2, Financial Data Extraction and Cleaning. In this section, we'll concentrate more on how we can extract data from various sources, including the web, and we'll also look at the philosophy of tidy data and how it can help in easily manipulating and transforming our data sets in R. What we'll learn is how we can extract financial data from various sources. We'll look at extracting data from the web, understand the tidy data, and specifically use the tidy quant package in R. In the next video, we'll look at visualizing the financial data in R, followed by generating user interfaces in Shiny, and finally, we'll create a Shiny application using both the UI.R file and the server.R file. Welcome to the video on extracting financial data from various sources in R. In this video, we'll learn about how we can connect with Google Sheets, browse Google Sheets, import data and upload data to Google Sheets, and we'll also look into how we can work with Excel sheets in R using the xlsx package. So basically we'll see how we can import and export data, or like create and add worksheets to our current workbook. So let's get started, right? So let's go to our R Studio. And I have already installed these two packages, but if you have not, you should install them first and then load them in R using the library function. Over here we'll be using basically two main libraries, Google Sheets and xlsx package. So let's run them first. I'm also using quant mode package to extract some financial data. That's why we have that over there. The first step would be to authorize your Google Sheet. So to authorize it, we use the gs_auth function, and when you will run this function for the first time, it will open up a browser window where you'll have to click allow, and it will finish the authorization process after that. Since I've already done that in the past, it's not opening the browser window for me. The next would be to create a Google Sheets object, and over here we are creating this object called prices, and there is only one argument we basically require, which is the link to the Google Sheet on our Google Drive, right? So this is the link that holds my data on Google Drive. So we use the gs_url function to run this, and once it runs successfully, it will create a Google Sheet object for you. So it said its sheet successfully identified, right? So this is a very important step, and because we'll be using this Google Sheets object everywhere in the script after this step. So let's say if you want to browse the data, right? So we can use the gs_browse function, and the only argument is the Google Sheets object over here. So basically we can run this function quickly, and it will open up the browser, and then you will see that it has all the prices for all the stocks, and it has two sheets, triple M, which has the prices for only the triple M company, and these are multiple companies over here. So this is how you would browse a Google Sheet on using R. So let's say if you have received data from someone within an organization, and we can if that person has given you the access to his link, well, then you can just use the gs_browse function and just take a look at the data. The next would be if you want to see only the second sheet, which is the triple M_prices, you can pass the argument ws equals 2, and this is the index of the sheet, right? The second sheet, and it will open up only the second sheet for you. So now let's see if you want to read the data from your Google Sheets drive. Use the gs_read function, and the only argument is the prices argument, which is again the Google Sheets object we created in the second step over here. I only want to read the second sheet over here, so I'm passing it the name. I could have also used 2, and the next argument is the range. So I don't want the ticker and the name of the company to in the columns. So what I do is I only specify the range, and I say my range is the columns, the cell columns 3 to 9, and so it will only read those columns. So let's quickly run this, and it will download, and it will tell you all the columns. And so now we see that we can see the data using the head function, and we see that it downloaded our open high low close data sets for us. The next is gs underscore copy. What this will do is it will use the Google Sheets object and create a copy of it on your Google Drive. So we can say gs underscore copy, and we can run this, and it will say a copy created successfully. Perfect. Now let's go to our Google Drive and see if it created this sheet for us, right? So let's go to Google Drive. Yes, we have the Google Sheet XYZ right over here, and it will basically look exactly like the prices sheet. Perfect. Now let's go back to our RStudio. Right, the next would be if you want to download the sheet and store it on your local folder. In that case, you use the gs underscore download function. So this is a bit different from gs underscore read function, right? We are just downloading the entire data set. So we use the prices, the object, the Google Sheets object, and the to argument is the name with which you want to store this data set. Right, so I want to store it with the name prices.xlsx. You could also use the extension prices.csv, but since we have two sheets and CSVs only allow one sheet per file, so we are going to just use the Excel sheet .xlsx package. Perfect. And it will, once it does it, it tells you the path where it's stored, and this is usually the current directory, the current home directory. We can also check your current directory using the getwd function, which will be the same. So now let's see if you want to upload data. So what we are going to do is we are going to create some analysis, perform some analysis, and push that data set onto our Google Drive. So first of all, we know that we have some prices over here, but we also have this date column, right? So what we are going to do is only remove the first column, and we can do that by saying -1 in the square bracket. And I just created a file called double M, which is a little bit confusing. You shouldn't follow this naming convention. The next would be I'm creating a data set for myself and storing the means of that in this new data set called means underscore M. What I'm doing is I want to calculate column means. So for all the columns in my data set, what is the mean? You can do that using the call means function in R. Perfect. So now if you look at the data set means underscore M, you will see that it calculated mean for all your columns at this, just using this one function. The next would be we create a copy, we save this data set because right now the data is living in your R environment. We want to save it as a CSV file on our working folder, on our current working folder. And once you do that, we can push this data from our current working folder or upload it using the gs underscore upload function to the Google Drive. And the only argument over here is the name of the file that you want to upload it to your Google's Drive. So once we do that, it will give you a message. You can go back to your Google Drive or our Google Drive, and we can see the name of the file right here, means underscore M, and that we have the means, which should basically match up with what you saw in R. So now let's go back to RStudio and let's work with Excel functions. Now note that sometimes while using Google Drive or Google Sheets, you might come across errors such as curl error, curl fetch memory, something like this. You can just avoid that error by just running these two lines. I also faced myself this error, and that's why I thought it was important to mention it. Working with Excel sheets. So most of the data comes in a nice CSV format, but a lot of times you want to work with data that comes in Excel sheets, like federal government CCAR scenarios would be in an Excel sheet and not a CSV format. Or like a lot of times you get models or datas that are in multiple sheets, right? So we need to know how we can work with xlsx package and perform some analysis. So as we created, if you remember, we created this prices object for Google Sheets. Similarly, we'll also create an object as our first step, which is using the load workbook function. And this is a sheet that I've provided along with the videos, so you can use this sheet. This is the name of which has correlation and some macroeconomic data. We load that using the load workbook function. Once you load it, we have this file created, and if you look on your right side, it's a Java object for you, right? So we can use the get sheets function from the xlsx package and pass in the name of the object we created, right? And it will give you all the different sheets, that the name of the sheets that are a part of this workbook. The next is we read this data in R, right? So we use the read.xlsx function and the name of the sheet that we want to read, but we also need to specify the worksheet that we want to load, right? So we can't load all the three like an entire workbook. We have to state which worksheet we want to read in. So over here we are only reading the third worksheet, which is the correlation data, and we can take a look at this data set using core.data. It's a data set with just correlation of macroeconomic variables. Now let's say if you want to add a worksheet to your current workbook. So your current workbook is core underscore prices, and I want to add a new worksheet. So I perform some calculations and I want to upload that onto the workbook, right? So the first step is we create this data using the get financial and view financial functions from the quant mode package. We discussed this in section 1 of the video. And once we do this, what I'm going to do is take a look at this data set right here. It is some accounting data, financial ratios. And the next is I create an empty sheet in my workbook. So currently my workbook is file as in it's a Java object. It could be any, you could have used any name, but we have used this name for creating our Java object in R. So we'll follow that naming convention. The next argument is the name of the sheet. So we can specify this is the name of the sheet, and I'll show you how it will work when we finish this process. Once you create this empty sheet, we need to add some data to it, right? So we use the add data frame function, and the argument to add data frame function is the data set we created. This is the data with some financial ratios in R. I want to paste this data in this new sheet which I created, J over here, right? So we select this data with line of code, we run it, and now we need to save it. So we are saying save this file workbook, because it created the sheet in the file, and the sheet, this new sheet has this data. It will basically save our workbook with the same name. Okay, now it's a three-step process if you remember. The first is you create the sheet, second is you push the data onto the sheet, you paste it onto the sheet using the add data frame, and as a last step we save it. We'll have to run the script a couple of times to understand how it works. Basically, in summary, we looked at how we can perform various Google Sheets function, like perform various xlsx function packages to work with Excel data as well as Google Drive. And then we also looked into how we can upload or download data as well.